Hello and welcome back to the Honest Business Podcast. I hope you are so well. Today is a really good episode and it's all about building a business for the life that you want, not the life that you've got. This is a trap that I think everybody has fallen into at some point. When you're on a growth journey, it is something that you're constantly kind of figuring out. Are you taking action based on where you're at, or are you taking action based on where you want to go? And how do you merge those two together is something that happens a lot in terms of the conversations I have with clients around feeling into that next level, or really believing in where you're going, or trying to hold the vision and the concept of that, even though you're sort of thinking, like, I'm not there yet. And you've got to put your belief into that. So when we are looking at growth and of business expansion, you almost have to shed this life that you're currently at, especially if you're trying to make a big change. Some people might not have to make this huge shift, but a lot of people, they really want to make a big change, and their business is sort of changing, and often sometimes their life is changing at the same time. But let's just say, even if it isn't changing at the same time, when you have the life that you have now and you're trying to get to this new point of the life that you want, you have to figure out where the business sits within that. And the trap that you get in is this idea of just constantly recycling the same actions and doing the same stuff all the time. And then sometimes it feels like you're not really building the life that you want. You just sort of building more headache sometimes, or more frustration around stuff you've already got. And I've got a number of different client stories, really, where this has been the case and where people have managed to break out of this, and they have really worked on their business and held themselves through this business transition, all the time focusing on what is the life I want to have versus what is the life that I'm experiencing today. Because the life that you're experiencing today quite often isn't the life that you're envisioning happening eventually in the future, because your business is facilitating that life to happen. But when you're going through that, you need to be able to build this kind of grit and resilience and kind of tenacity within you that allows you to like really believe and feel into what that life that you want to have feels like, is how do you behave, how do you act. There was somebody I helped a few years ago who was amazing at this. Like, she was phenomenal at doing this, and her life was vastly different from the life that she wanted to live. So she was living a life, she didn't hate her life, it wasn't like miserable or horrendous, but it wasn't the life she wanted to live. And the life she did want to have was, she lived in a different location, she lived in a different house, she did different things day to day, she worked with different people, she wanted her relationship to be different. Like, there was other things in her life that weren't her business that she was ready for a change for. But she kind of felt as though the business was kind of the catalyst for making a lot of the other stuff happen. And she was fantastic at actually being able to, one, vision it, be able to, two, hold it, and then be able to kind of take action and constantly make decisions in the business based on what does the person that lives the life I want to live do in this situation versus what does it feel right for me to do now in my situation. And sometimes, obviously, we have to use common sense, and sometimes the answer can't always be what the kind of new life person would say. I'm not saying be completely ridiculous or make, silly decisions, but sometimes you do have to kind of be a bit off the wall, in the sense of, I'm going to do this because I want this to happen and I know that I'm capable of doing X, Y, and Z thing. And she really allowed herself to make this stuff happen. And the interesting thing was the fact that she had that trait, and the fact she had that ability. And when I say that, it wasn't that she was born with it. I believe that she worked on it and she created it and she cultivated it in herself. And obviously she had support around her, which is hugely, that support team piece is hugely important. She was able to make that switch happen every time. She was able to build the business for the life she wants to have versus the one she has now. And her growth in turn of that then was fast. Like, she made some changes quick and moved really fast from the place she was at in the business, and like drastically changed things. I mean, like, insane revenue growth, insane change in her, insane shift in her leadership, insane shifting how she positioned herself in her industry. She like elevated her industry. She just really had a huge, amazing kind of growth spurt and journey. And I think it's important to share with you because I want you to know that it's possible. And she's not the only one. There's many people who have done this. I think the difference of the people that can do it is, one, they want it a lot. And I have to say that because I know it's controversial, but like they want it really bad. Like they want that new life really, really bad. And so they're so determined to make it happen. Two, I think there's also this idea of like they really understand delayed gratification. The people who understand delayed gratification can do this, where they build the business for the life they want, not the one they've got. The people who don't really get delayed gratification and really struggle with implementing it are the ones that tend to fall back into making decisions and kind of doing things in their business that sit within the life they have now versus the one they want in the future. But I wanted to kick the episode off with just that, to kind of like grace us with this idea that yes, it's possible, yes, it's going to happen, yes, it can be a real thing, and yes, it is tangible, even though it might sound untangible. When we're looking at how do we build a life for that future, how do we build a business, sorry, for that life that we want, strategy and having a plan come into play hugely. When you have a strategy that is going to give you that life, that's already a tick in the box. The next issue then becomes, what do I have to do every day? Like, what do I have to make happen? That is where your plan comes in. Your plan allows you to know, okay, every day I'm going to do this, or this week I'm going to do this, or every month I've got to focus on this, or I know that in my rhythm of a pattern I'm going to be focusing on X, Y, and Z. When you have that plan merged with the strategy together, it then becomes easier. You're not making as many decisions. You're not questioning yourself. You're not wondering, oh God, am I doing the right thing or am I not? There's no like dance between, I fancy doing this, but I don't think I should be doing it. It's like, well, how committed are you to following the strategy and to implementing the plan? And if you are, then great, follow it and let's see what happens. And so if somebody is really set on like building this business because they want to change their life, often getting a strategy and solid growth plan together is immensely helpful, because it starts to help them go on that journey, because you're already dealing with the mindset monkeys. You're already dealing with the kind of mindset and the leadership stuff that comes up, the whole idea of, imposter syndrome, the whole idea of coming up with, who am I to do this, can I do this, I don't have X, Y, and Z. That all is coming up. What you don't need on top of that is you having to make decisions around what you're actually supposed to be doing every day. And so the idea of having a plan and a strategy comes in, because that's then done for you. You just have to get on and do it, and then deal with the mindset and the leadership stuff that comes up. It's a lot easier for you to have help to know what you need to do in terms of strategically, in terms of action points, and then you dealing with the mindset stuff and working on that, because it's much more of a bigger game than people want to say that it is. And people are very easy to just be like, oh well, just action this plan. But what happens is there's a whole bunch of emotions come up as you go through that, and as you have wins, like as you start implementing a plan, you're going to get wins, hopefully every week, maybe every month, maybe every 2 months. Every time a win comes up, there's often an emotion that comes up with it, and it's not always positive. Sometimes it's like really tricky, and sometimes it's like, oh, I don't know if this feels right, or is this enough? Do I just stop here? And so you have to then do this dance of kind of being able to work through the mindset stuff that comes up at the same time. So that is a kind of idea of, if you just need a really basic solution, if you're someone who sat there going, I want to build a business for the life that I want to have versus the one that I have now, one of your solutions is literally get a solid growth plan, get a strategy together. That will massively help you. But I want to go deeper than that, and I want you to fully understand a bit more about kind of what else is there to this. So the reason why you end up going back to the business that doesn't really align with your kind of dream life, or that doesn't facilitate your dream life happening, is a number of things. One piece of it is you get stuck in old habits. Let's just call that what it is. Yeah, there are habits that we are all used to. Depending on how long you've been in business, depends on how many bad habits you've got and how deep rooted they are. We all do habits that we know we shouldn't do. whether that's like not doing certain marketing activities, not replying to DMs, whether it's struggling to communicate with team members, whether it's that you don't plan ahead, whether it's that you never ask people for feedback, whether it's that you struggle with a certain part of client delivery. Like, everybody has got bad habits. Everyone has got habits they'd like to change. The issue is that we get stuck in them, and that really prevents all the other great activity that we're doing. Often can come down to these little things that we're doing that are really unhelpful. Sometimes it's this idea that you kind of prioritize growth and you can't keep your commitment to looking after your well-being at the same level. Now, this is a kicker, because I think we can all be like, yep, we've done this before. So what happens here is often you're taking loads of action, you're implementing the plan, you're implementing the strategy, real output from you. If you're not matching that with personal well-being, personal looking after yourself, self-care, really taking time to fill your cup, to see people, to do the stuff you enjoy to do outside of work, that all comes at a crescendo, and sometimes it just like crashes and burns and you're just like, I can't do this anymore. And so you have this period of really focused working, but then inevitably you end up back with the business that doesn't serve you in terms of your life, because you can't keep up with it and because it's not sustainable. So the sustainability piece is really crucially important. The other thing that does happen is people following trends, which I feel like we've spoken about this in a few episodes ago. So if you're someone who loves to follow trends, you love to get into like the idea of what's going on in your industry, maybe you like a bit of a gossip, maybe you just like to like get all in kind of newness and pop culture and things that are happening. Often the people that align with that, I see also having this issue of they've built a business that is just kind of where they're at, and it just kind of keeps them where they're at rather than the one they want to have. And I know that's harsh. I don't mean to be harsh. I'm not saying that's everybody. But if I have to be really honest, there is this, I have seen a pattern between, if you want to follow industry trends and you want to keep on top of like being really current, it doesn't necessarily normally help you long term in terms of big shifts. It normally just helps in terms of maintaining some kind of thing that you're got going on. That is, those three pieces I've talked about are tricky and are frustrating in various different elements. The other thing that I would say is a really important one is sometimes you might feel like you're trapped in your business and in your life. Some people can feel trapped by the constraints that they have in their life. Some people will feel trapped by their own success. For some people, the success they've had to date is almost too much in itself, and so they then internalize all of this emotion and they can't then grow because they're sort of still trying to come to terms with the life that they're living now. And if you've been in business a while and you've had a bit of success and you're kind of like, I do want to go for more, but I'm not really yet sure what that looks like, or I'm quite comfortable where I am, there's nothing wrong with that. And there's an idea of you need to decide, like, are you happy with that or are you not? There's no need to constantly keep growing. But if you have made a decision you want to keep going and you're struggling to then take the action you need to, sometimes that can be this idea of subconsciously you're feeling like, I'm sort of, this success is sort of too much, and I'm like trapped in the sense of, if I leave this comfort, what does that mean? Or like, who am I? What does it mean for my identity? For some people, it's this idea of being trapped in the sense of, I don't dare move in case it all burns to the ground, and I know how hard it was to get here. So for some people, it's this real fear around like, I can't go through what I went through to get to this point. And something I would say is, like, if you're someone as a business owner who has experienced success and you're ready to pivot or you're ready to change or add something into the mix, you don't need to worry about how hard it was to get to that point, because I can pretty much nearly always guarantee that it's never as hard as that initial piece. If you're going after some kind of huge growth goal that's completely different from what you've achieved, then okay, scrap my comment. But for most people listening to this episode, if you're someone who has built something and then you're trying to like pivot to a different part of business or a different part of your industry or adding a different service offering, that is not going to be anywhere near as hard as what it was to get going, providing you've got a decent strategy and you've got, a plan and you're able to implement and you've got a support system around you. And don't let that idea of being trapped by your own success kind of stop you from being able to grow. Another important one here to acknowledge is, if you're building a business for the life that you have now versus the one that you want, and you're struggling with, like, I don't want to keep doing this, I want to move forward and I want to build it for the life I want to have. If you are burnt out, and I mean like you're clinically burnt out and you're really suffering and you're really struggling to see the wood for the trees and you're just knackered, it's going to be really hard for you to do this. Like, it's going to be really difficult for you to be able to just do all the things you need to do and feel like absolutely amazing. And so acknowledging the burnout, acknowledging like where you're at, acknowledging what constraints you have is really important, because it might be that you need a lot of time, you need to chill, you might be that you need, like, the strategy that you're trying to go after is never going to work in the first place if you are energetically depleted. So just be really mindful of that when you're sort of moving through things. But from a practical perspective, let's talk about how does your business fit into your dream life rather than you fitting your life around your business. And that means even if it's your dream business, right? So for a lot of people, I think the issue is they've designed a dream business, but they're then just going to fit their life around the business. And I really want to urge you, like, so much of my work is, how can we fit, like, have your life and then just fit the business around your life, and it facilitates your dream life. So what I mean by that is, you need to know what your dream life is. You need to be able to think about it. And I don't mean to say that it can't ever change, or that it's, just think about, what does it mean right now? What is it that you want to build over the next few years? Have that in your head and think about that. And then we can fit the business into it. Like, some of the best consultant pieces of work that I do that I absolutely love is when people come to me and say, this is the life I want, this is how much I want to work, this is what I enjoy doing. I don't know how I'm going to get there, or I'm doing all the things and none of it's working. And then we can create a plan to get them there, because there's some fantastic stuff that can happen from that. And I am a beautiful example of this. So I know some of you like examples in episodes. This was exactly what I did many years ago. I was like, I want to work 4 days a week. Well, at the time that I was doing this, I was ill. I was really, really ill, more ill than I am now. And it was more of a necessity than a want. But let's just say, I was like, I want to work 4 days a week. I want to take a week off every month so that I've got space to just, like, for life to happen and do its thing. I want to work with amazing people. Like, I had this list of about 10 to 15 different pointers and different items. And I was like, that is what I want. And then I crafted a business around that. And I kept solid in that. Like, I was really, really clear of what my expectations were, what I wanted, what it was going to look like, what it was going to feel like. And, now I live that, and it is immensely fulfilling. And of course, there's always things you want to change, there's things you want to add, there's things that I haven't yet got there. I'm not like sat here with some sort of like, oh, this is just so perfect. It's not. There's things that I'm constantly working on. But in terms of the overall structure of it, I had to come at this from, what is my dream life? How does the business fit into it? And then every decision I made was like, is that actually getting me to the business that I want to have that fits in with that dream life? Or am I just creating it based on, like, what makes sense for right now? And that does mean things like saying no to exciting projects. It means, like, saying, well, actually, that isn't going to align with what I'm trying to achieve. Like, there's various things where it's like a solid line in the sand of going, that is not where I'm trying to move to. And it's hard because it tests your value system. It tests, like, what it is that you're actually going after. It can be a really tricky one, that, because you're often like, oh, I would have liked to do that, or oh, this would have been good. I think if you have a chronic illness, it kind of makes it easier, in the sense of, it doesn't make it easier, but it makes it more clear cut in the sense of, you can't debate with yourself yes or no, because sometimes it's just like a straight no. But everybody goes through that frustration piece. And for me, like, making sure that the business fitted with my dream life was like such a core understanding of my happiness, because I'd been unhappy for a long time. And I think it gets really deep, okay? Like, this gets really deep really quickly. We're not just talking about fluffy things of like, oh, let's just build a business and build a dream life. We're talking about your happiness, and we're talking about a limited amount of time. We don't know how long we're here for on this planet. We have absolutely no clue. But it's short. And so you need to be able to live every single day really fulfilled, feeling like I'm doing great work and feeling like you're utilizing your time how you want to spend it. And that comes from you getting very clear about what you do and do not want to do. And then building a business around that. And so be really, really clear with what that is. Another practical question for you to think about if you're trying to really figure out, okay, well, how do I really consolidate this, is I would ask yourself 3 questions. One question is, where is the profit in your business? Often people have got all sorts of different things going on in the business, but there's actually a few areas where the profit really lies. Lean into that. It's okay that you have a profit business. Like, it's okay that you're not a charity. So where does the profit lie in your business? And then where is the joy in your business? And do they correlate? For some people they do, for some people they don't. Where is the joy in your business? You need to have joy in your business. And the third question is, where can you simplify things? Often the more simplified we can get, the more rewarding it is, the more easier it is, the more sustainable it is. When we look at sustainability and we look at how do we keep things simple, those two really sit nicely with each other. And usually joy comes into that as well. So often, if things are simplified, they can be sustainable and they're also joyful. And then the key one is, can we add profit into that mix? Which often we can. It's almost like a framework that you can then use to be like, am I on the right path or am I not? Another thing to do from a practical perspective is look at a time audit. So really look at, over a month, where are you spending your time every single day? Kind of what is taking up the time, what is feeling good, what is not feeling good, and where does the time fit into the dream life? And then where does the time fit into the business you want to have? And where does the time fit into this piece in the middle where you're moving to that? So you've got the life you want to have and the life you've got now, and you're taking loads of actions to get you to that point and creating that business. Where's the checkpoints? Where are the things where you're going to know that you're going in the right direction? And how can you use your time to really aid that process? It's another super, super important one. Something that comes up a lot with this is, if you're kind of with us still on this topic and you're sort of there and you're sort of grasping this and you're like thinking, yeah, this is kind of interesting and I'm kind of there and I kind of get this, is there's resistance will come up for you, and fear often comes up. There's this kind of like drawback sometimes. Sometimes it'll feel really great and you're like, yeah, I'm following this really cool strategy. And then sometimes it'll be like, oh, I don't know if this is going to work. And it feels like you're sort of veered off track, and you've got to get back on that track really fast. And that's how you make sure you build the business for your life you want, not the one you have. If you don't get back on the track, you end up building for the life you have. So as soon as you get off that track, you're like, jump on. Okay, jump back on. Let's keep going. And I'm not saying you can't have a wobble. I'm just saying when you wobble, you need to be able to acknowledge you're having a wobble. Because sometimes if you can't acknowledge it, you then just end up sort of self-sabotaging and doing all sorts of sort of action and behaviors, or no action at all, that then leaves you sort of in no man's land. And that's where it gets really uncomfortable for people. So if you're feeling resistance and fears, you've kind of got to start really naming what they are. Like, you have to get them out on the table and be really clear. So, is it income? Is that the issue? For some people, it's this loss of like, oh my God, I'm going to make less money. What does that mean for me? Some people, it's like, I don't know if I can have more money. And you really have to understand, like, what is it that's worrying you? Sometimes it's this idea of failure. So for some people, it's like an ego thing, or just a general fear of failure of, if I fail, what does that mean? What do people think of me? What does that make me look like? What does that mean for my story? Who do I identify with now, and who am I losing on that journey? Or what am I gaining in my identity? Really thinking about, what is the fear and what are you scared of? And it might just be that you're scared of failing. That can just be the whole thing. It might be, I'm really scared of this not working out. And so you then need to go through an sort of exercise of, well, what is the worst that can happen? And really get into the nitty gritty of why. I know I've said this before on a podcast, but like going into, why did you write that answer? What does that mean? Okay, well, why? What is it that's specifically worrying you? Because that's where you can start to actually unpick the things that are causing you to kind of stay where you are. There's another piece of this pie where if you're struggling with the fear piece, or you're feeling that resistance and you're like, I actually am not scared, but I'm just feeling resistance, like I'm feeling like this back and forth of, is this right or is this not? Sometimes there's this thing you can do around risk and understanding how do you behave around risk and reward. Because often when you've got this gap of the life I want over here, but the business and the life that I have now is in one place, some of the fear might come from this idea of, this is risky, this is scary, this is unknown, and is the reward going to be big enough? So for some people, it's like, if you don't believe that you can actually do it, you won't take the action you need to do to get there because you don't believe that the reward will ever be big enough, because you don't believe you're ever going to get there. And that, I know, sounds like a bit of a tongue twister, but there is definitely this sort of motion of, you've got to sort of be able to say, right, well, yes, this is risky. Yes, I don't know if this is going to work. And if it doesn't work, we go back to where we're at now, or we realign things, or we relook at things. Failure is not a bad thing. Like, failure is a good thing. We're going to learn a lot from it. Like, you're going to do loads of things with failure. But understanding as well, like, is how big is the reward? And the reward might be money, it might be happiness, it might be time, it might be validation, it can be all sorts of things. I'm not here, it's not for me to define and say what the reward should or shouldn't be, but just be aware of, is it that I'm risk averse? Is it that I'm sort of scared of risk? Is it that the risk, sometimes the risk doesn't feel big enough, is another one. So for sometimes people are too comfortable in where they're at now, so they don't actually feel like they need to make much of an effort, because they're kind of like, well, I kind of like where I'm at now, so I'm not that bothered. And that's okay if you are, but it's just about knowing if that is you or not. I am going to leave it there with this episode because I think it can get quite complicated and too contextual. But in the short of kind of a summary, a plan and a strategy is what's going to help you be able to build the business for the life that you want rather than the life that you have. And if you're struggling with that, that's what you probably need to do. You need a solid strategy, you need a solid plan, you need probably implementation help to keep you going at those kind of roadblocks where things go slightly wrong. When you're building a business for the life you want and not the one you have, is going to be moments where you have to make decisions based on like a conflicting moment of, well, I think this is the right answer, but I don't know. Sometimes you just got to lean into it and you got to go with it. And I think understanding your risk profile and really figuring out what your risk aversion is can be helpful in terms of making this all smoothly and kind of keeping that process going. But please, please, please keep building your business for the life that you want to have. Because the life you have now, if you want to change that, it is worth you betting on yourself and worth you going for it. And I believe in you. Like, why can't you make it happen? I often say to people, why not you? Why can't that be you? But it's going to come down to you making that happen. And that's why when you do make it happen, you should take so much joy and fulfillment and sort of respect for yourself because you've made that happen, because it does come down to you. And yes, you might have support around you, but very often this kind of stuff, it's the internal stuff, and it's the stuff that is really tricky for us to navigate, but is worth us navigating. Take care, look after yourself. I hope you take some good kind of action from this, or maybe you just go out throughout your day with a little step, I don't know, a little pep in your step. Is that the right saying? Who knows? I think that's the right saying. Feel free to come and say hello to me over on Instagram, or say, yes, I've listened to this episode and I've taken this from it, because I'd love to hear. I love hearing you when you check in and say that this is helpful. It's really nice to hear from you, and it's nice to know that you're sort of putting things into action, or that they've affected you, or they've impacted you in some way. I will speak to you next week. Take care. Look after yourself. Bye.